Hi all, my name is Chandler and thanks for joining me at CJ Squared Studios. Today I'll be unboxing a Halo Edition Xbox 360. I'll show the disassembly and cleaning processes. New thermal paste will be applied as well. This unit was purchased from eBay for $100 as a working console. When I tested it, it had the red ring of death, so I was able to get a partial refund. I then purchased a donor Jasper board for $40 on eBay. That Jasper console appeared to be an Elite Edition Xbox 360 with a manufacture date of 2009, and that was September 2009. So I believe that's when the Jasper V2s started to be created. Not positive on that, but it may be a Jasper or a Jasper V2. I have a small collection of Halo games and consoles, but I'm by no means a serious collector. Everything I own is meant to be played, and I grew up on Halo. Some of my best memories of the franchise were Halo 3 custom games, specifically Infection on Sandtrap, although that's not what we named it. We used warthogs with max infected speed and low gravity for the infected as well. They would run around with energy swords, and we weren't allowed to use turrets. We'd just drive around and mostly just try to run them over. It was a great time. We often had a full lobby, which isn't likely to ever happen again. Restoring this Halo Edition Xbox is my way of preserving those memories, and who knows, maybe even creating some new memories. It's also just really cool to have something like this, to throw it on a shelf in a gaming room, or I'm gonna have it on my desk right now, so I'll be able to look at it and appreciate it. I think the Halo 3 Special Edition Xbox 360 is one of the coolest, if not the coolest, Special Edition consoles out there. Um, I'm obviously biased as a fan of Halo, but the sage green and the orange kind of goldish accents on it. Um, it's literally just Master Chief's armor as an Xbox with some interesting writing on it, and it looks great. So yeah, really happy with the purchase, and this was a fun little project. If you're into Halo, you have good memories of Xbox 360. I would take your time picking out, whatever special edition you like on eBay, and then making a project out of it. It's a lot of fun, especially if you've done something like this before. It's not too difficult to do, and there are a lot of guides. At this point, this is the initial unboxing for me as well, so I'm going over the cosmetic condition of it, testing all the buttons and flaps, and got this on video just to make sure if there was anything wrong with it, any huge cosmetic flaw that wasn't apparent in the pictures, that I could get a full refund and return it if needed. What I do at this point, not sure if this is the recommended cleaning solution. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not recommended. I don't believe it does long-term damage, but I'm just using isopropyl alcohol to quickly wipe off the console, get any dirt and grime off of it, kind of complete my inspection here. I've seen other YouTubers use like sprays and cleaning solutions that are specifically made, purposely made for use on plastics, and sometimes even specifically made for retro console restoration itself. So definitely follow their guides and use the products they recommend. This is me really just being lazy, using what I have on hand. At some point, I'll do some research, find a more suitable solution that I can use on this, wipe it down, and help preserve it really, because I do want to have this for a long time, pass it down to my kids, and keep it in good condition. That's really the whole purpose of buying it. So just finishing up my inspection here, I found a few scuffs on it. Not thrilled with those. They weren't apparent in the pictures, but that's part of the risk of buying on eBay. So is what it is. Not a big deal for me. So at this point, I'm beginning disassembly of the Xbox 360, taking off the faceplate to start with a plastic tool just to prevent any damage. Um, while I go through and actually complete the disassembly here, I start to notice that the Xbox has already been taken apart before, and not very carefully, it seems like. Um, so there are a few broken tabs on both of the pieces of plastic on the top and bottom, or the sides, however you want to look at it. And you'll see those in a moment once I'm done cleaning the surface of the console. I've sped all this up to 3x speed just so you can see it without it having to take as long as it took me, really. So here I go, taking out those tabs. Kind of struggled with it for a little bit, but took my time, found them, and I'm trying to carefully remove them. And you'll see the damage here on the tabs. It's not something I'm going to see, um, so not a huge deal to me. Just wish it had been noted in the listing that this was taken apart. The fact that it was taken apart as well leads me to believe that whoever listed this, or at least whoever they got it from, knew it was broken and had actually taken it apart without any real way to try and fix it. What I'm doing here is just comparing the side plastic pieces, or the top and bottom plastic pieces, from the donor Xbox and the Halo Xbox. Um, the donor Xbox was in much better shape, had never been opened, it seemed like, so that was good news. Those side pieces were in much better shape. However, the color on the Halo Xbox is more of a gray, at least to my eyes, whereas the donor Xbox, being a black Xbox, those side pieces are more black. Actually, come to think of it, I do have a few broken earlier model Xboxes. The plastic might match better, so eventually I might swap that out and just have the knowledge that those pieces and tabs are all intact. So if I do have to take it apart in the future to reapply thermal paste, maybe put on some PTM 7950, then I can do so a little bit more easily and without having to worry about the already broken tabs too much. At this point, I'm starting to unscrew everything just to remove the plastic shell from the Xbox itself. And there are a lot of guides on how to disassemble Xbox 360s. There was a 3-minute guide that I found online, and I'll find the name of that posted in the description along with a link. That was really helpful, straight to the point. That might actually even be the name of the either YouTube channel or the video itself. But it was great. It was a 3-minute video just on how to take apart the Xbox 360. So I referenced that a lot going through this, and it was really helpful. I've taken apart a lot of original Xboxes, but the process for the Xbox 360 is obviously different. Um, I actually found it, other than all the plastic tab removal and disconnections, I found it to be a little bit more intuitive, um, especially screwing all the screws back in, um, or at least a little bit less labor intensive. This point again, just cleaning up those disc tray plastic pieces just to make them look nice. Here I actually have the original metal plate that came with the Halo 360, and it is really just disgusting. So it looked like there was some corrosion on it of some sort, whether it's rust or whatever it might be. Um, I made the decision to remove it from the plastic plate, and I'll take the shield from the donor Xbox and install that in its place later on. But here I am, just kind of assessing it, taking a look at it, seeing what I can do. I noticed that there are two kind of like plastic rivets, and I'm just kind of readjusting the rivet there. But you can see the state of that metal shield was not great. So here I'm taking the metal shield off the donor Xbox. And before I actually go ahead and install it, I had some maintenance, a few things that I had to do to the plastic shell. So I cleaned that up. And here I am actually cleaning the shield itself using isopropyl alcohol once again. It's just what I have on hand. I'm sure there are better solutions. But you can really see how dirty this thing is. It looks like it was well used, so not sure if that's a good sign or not. It just seems like this Xbox had been used pretty frequently and just was never cleaned. So it gives me some, a good task to do. I do like cleaning things up, so this is fun for me. Enjoyed that. And here I'm just kind of inspecting a little bit, taking all the paper towel pieces out of there. They kind of got wedged in there. I was pretty rough there, just trying to make sure I could clean it as best as I could. And here I'm actually taking some steel wool and just rubbing some of the minor corrosion off of this one. I've done this in the past with other metal shielding, and it's worked pretty well. Um, what I actually did for one of my original Xboxes was I sanded it down or rubbed it down with a steel wool and spray painted it with a gray spray paint, um, a spray paint specifically for metal, and it looks really cool. Obviously, you're not going to see it because it's in the Xbox, but it also goes a long way to preserving the shielding itself. And I don't know if that has any impact on heat dissipation or anything like that, but looks good and seemed to solve the issue of the poor state that the shielding was in. So at this point, just cleaning that cover with a Q-tip, trying to be really thorough with it, make sure it's spotless, testing out the shielding, making sure it fits, and I'm just trying to straighten out those plastic rivets or whatever you want to call them, make room for the shielding, and here I'm just going to press it down and try to flatten out those rivets as much as I can so it keeps the shielding in place. Again, I'm sure there's a better way to do this. This is just the way that I did. So now I'll really get into it with the Q-tips, and I'll let you just enjoy the cleaning. So while I'm cleaning, I get pretty aggressive and I make a mistake here. I actually knock off one of the plastic tabs. This case is going on 20 years old at this point. I think this was a 2007 model, so it's getting up there in age. Obviously, it was me who broke it off, so definitely my fault here. I'm going to go ahead and think of a solution. I have some super glue. I apply that um, and just give it a bit to rest and really solidify there. At this point, I'm just modifying one of the Q-tips so I can really get into the ventilation holes. The I think it's the back of the console here. It is. Individually clean those out just because I noticed there's a lot of funky stuff in there, and that's where the airflow goes through. So if I don't clean this out well, then it's just not going to have as good of an airflow as it could. Um, so I'm really just being particular about this section here. And at this point, just going ahead and doing a quick fitting. This is actually the entire donor motherboard removed from that system, along with the shielding. From here, I do a quick cut to the donor Xbox itself, just showing some of the disassembly from that. The removal of all the screws here, so you'll see me start, and magically they're all done. All right, and then I go ahead and remove the top cover. And here I'm going to do a cleaning of that motherboard that I just inserted earlier in the video, kind of realizing how disgusting this thing is. Taking my time, just slowly figuring this out. I did watch that video, which is again going to be linked in the description, and that was very helpful. But I didn't rewatch it while I was doing it, which is something I usually do. I'll just kind of like skip through sections of videos as I'm doing it, just make sure I'm not doing everything 100% right. This time I kind of winged it and maybe missed a step here or there. But there you can just see me removing some disgusting specimens from the motherboard. And at this point, I do a quick vacuum. Again, maybe not recommended, but I'm trying to be as gentle as I can, not knock any capacitors loose, and really just try to suck up whatever dust I can before I get in there with a Q-tip and try to clean the individual fins of the heat sinks. Also, doing my best to try to get between all the capacitors. There are a few different groups of capacitors that are linked pretty closely together, so I definitely took my time going through those. Don't want to have to replace any of those. Just kind of move into a paper towel here, trying to cover some more surface area. Again, being really gentle, as much as I can at least. But this thing definitely needed a good deep clean. And this is probably the worst part of the whole thing, the fan, for obvious reasons. Took me a long time to go through and actually clean this thing, so I did speed up the video to 3x speed. You're welcome to speed it up to 2x on top of that, and just watch me break the sound barrier with my Q-tip cleaning here. So I move on to the next step, which is flipping the motherboard over and completing disassembly here. So I'm removing all of the short screws. All of the long screws were already removed. Those hold the motherboard to the top shielding in the top case. Then I move on to the heatsink screws. And you could probably remove these a little bit better by slowly releasing tension on all of them. Again, definitely don't follow this as an exact guide. There are better videos on disassembly. Then I realized that I missed this front panel here. So I go ahead and remove the screws for that. So now the motherboard's out. What I did was, after unscrewing the daughter board from the shielding, just pulled that daughter board out. It plugs into the motherboard, just kind of like a USB almost. With that removed, I was able to angle the motherboard out and remove it from that shielding. And here I'm just doing some cleanup. Top of the motherboard was disgusting, so the bottom warranted a quick clean as well, while I have it out at least. Something I didn't do, which I wish I had, was to actually go over the DVD drive itself, um, disassemble it, clean it, maybe replace the belt. I'll have to do that at some point in the future. Right now it's working just fine, but should have at least applied some grease to the tracks and done some quick maintenance on that while I had it all disassembled. And here I'm just removing those X clamps. They can be kind of a pain. I have a pair of metal tweezers, So I'm using those. A lot of different ways to do that. It took a lot longer than the video is letting on. I cut a lot of that out. It's definitely nerve-wracking. What I initially tried to do was to clean the thermal paste off with isopropyl alcohol. I had very little, pretty much no success at all with that. I eventually moved on to goof off, which, from my reading online, seems to be okay on electronics as long as you clean it up right after you use it. Here, I actually even resort to scraping just because of how stuck to the actual heatsink that this thermal paste is. I mean, it's almost 20 years old at this point, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I actually pulled out a razor and tried to use that as well. Uh, you'll see later that both of these will be completely clean, and that's after the goof off has been applied. Here I'm doing more isopropyl alcohol, which just doesn't do much at all. I actually eventually go ahead and apply the goof off to the CPU and GPU as well, which again I read online was safe to do. Um, and even then, it was still pretty difficult to remove that old thermal paste. So it's definitely a tricky task and nerve wracking again because you don't want to screw anything up. Don't want to brick the Xbox. The whole point is to get this working motherboard into the shell of the non-working Xbox so that I have a working unit. And there you can see I'm using the goof off. So you'll see in a second how much cleaner this gets with that. Even the one on the right I applied some to as well. Just kind of do a quick wipe off there. And after I do the goof off, you can see that just comes right off. After I do the goof off, I go over it with isopropyl and just clean it out again. And the point of doing that is just to make sure that there's no goof off residue left over. I actually went through each of the individual fins on the heat sinks with a paper towel as well. I had already done it with a Q-tip, but wanted to make sure it stayed clean. Here, I'm just using isopropyl. It's not working at all. As you can tell, I was hesitant to try the goof off initially, but it really needed it. So eventually I do use that. But essentially what I do is I use the goof off, it cleans up really well, and then I apply thermal paste and just reassemble the heat sinks with the X clamps, which definitely took a lot longer than it needed to. I'm not very experienced with that. So at this point, I'm moving on to the plastic shroud cleaning, and that was pretty disgusting as well because the fans were sucking that gross air directly through there. Clean the DVD unit off as well, and here's where I wish I had disassembled it at the time, but we'll definitely do that eventually, like I said. And here's that fan. Absolutely disgusting. I went through so many paper towels and so many Q-tips on this thing. And here's the fan all cleaned up. So at this point, I'm moving into reassembling the Xbox. So you can see me plugging in the daughter board after I make sure the motherboard is just properly aligned here. So like I said, it plugs in just like a USB. Then I move towards screwing that in. And I drop the screws here a lot. I cut that out so you don't have to watch me fumble. Making sure that I'm not tightening it too much, just enough to hold it in. So the daughter board's all set. Next step is the fan, which is nice and clean. Makes me happy to see the finished work. Everything's clean, looks a lot better than it did in the beginning. Then I move on to the DVD drive, which, wrong step here. I'm supposed to install that plastic shroud first, but I'll realize my mistake eventually and take the DVD drive out and put that plastic shroud in. Gonna do a bit of extra cleaning here. Install the faceplate. Make sure the buttons all still work. Oh no, the shroud is supposed to go in first. Easy fix. This is a lot easier in my opinion than reassembling an original Xbox. There's just a lot less wires, a lot less things that you have to move around to make room for the components. Here I realized that the super glue that I've used seems to be rubbing off some of the actual color of the case, and I get a bit worried here. I'm not sure if it'll eventually melt through it. I don't think it will. I'll do a little bit of extra research, but it's doing its job. It's holding that tab in there. Is that tab necessary? Probably not, but wanted to just fix my mistake there if I could. Here I'm reinstalling the eject button, which I put on a bit too early. You're supposed to do that after you put on that top piece of the case. At this point, just screwing everything back in. And when I go to reinstall everything, I do actually tighten them down, just going from corner to corner on each heatsink, making sure that it's not overly tight on one section and loose on another, and going around and installing all the motherboard screws and the long screws. Trying to do this from memory. Took a little bit of trial and error there. So I wrap up the screws, and now we can move towards putting the case back together. So I take that bottom half of the case and very gently try to press those together. And here you can see again some of the damage from the previous disassembly from the previous owner there. Okay, in my book. I'm not going to be looking at the back of this thing, so not a huge deal. Reassembling those plastic side panels or the top panel, depends on your perspective. I usually leave the Xbox 360 laying flat. Let me know down in the comments if you prefer flat or standing. I just worry that someone's going to come over and accidentally knock it over or something, which is probably silly, but comparing the color there on the donor plastic pieces versus the original, I do end up using the original even though they are damaged. And the final piece here, the faceplate. Trying to be pretty gentle, make sure everything is fully clipped in as it should be. And that's a motherboard swap complete. This has been Chandler with CJ Squared Studios. Thank you for taking the time to watch this amateur motherboard swap. See you in the next video.